Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest webinar. I'm Ron Bro, CEO of TopStep. Thank you for joining today. Our topic today is learn how to expand the boundaries of your OpenAir PSA system. So with that, we'll talk about some of the things that we see with our customers looking to expand OpenAir beyond some of the standard functionality. So let's get started. So all of you have OpenAir, and PSA tool is a big topic as professional service organizations continue to grow into the future. And what does a successful implementation look like? And what does a successful PSA tool look like? Well, obviously, our goal of all PSA organizations is to grow. So the tool has to be scalable. It has to accommodate acquisitions, growth, diversion, all sorts of things that it's important to have. It also needs to make sure it supports the business model and the processes. There's a lot of PSA tools out there where you have to conform to it. OpenAir is a more flexible tool. It allows you to OpenAir to flex to your business model. We see customers as small as 5-10 users to 5-10,000 users, and they all have different processes, and OpenAir thankfully can configure to support them. Obviously, it's there to support your resources, making sure that can complete their daily tasks, whether that be project management, resource management, time capturing, expenses. It's there to support your teams to make their life more efficient. Also providing transparency. When you have a successfully deployed PSA, now we have visibility across the PS organization. We can see where time is missing. We can see our billing scenarios. What's the percent complete of our projects? All sorts of great KPI information that becomes readily available at your fingertips. And then last but not least, it's really about standardization. When we work with companies that are coming off of spreadsheets, not everyone is working in the same way. People have different processes. And really, when you're moving everyone into a single tool, coming up with common methodology, common processes, really standardizing how people do their work. And that's really critical as you move forward, and it supports, scalability and all the other items above. However, a PSA solution like OpenAir may not handle all of your needs, and we see this quite a bit. We have customers where they want to, they have needs that OpenAir doesn't handle. So how do we accommodate those? We want to make sure that we are able to meet the requirements through customization where needed. We want to minimize customizations, but we want to be able to either integrate with a CRM or a finance system or an HR system. We want to create some custom notifications where needed, or to support reporting. So making sure that you can expand your PSA tool like OpenAir to meet the requirements beyond core capabilities. When you are expanding and customizing, it's important to make sure you have control of the solution you're putting in place. And we do a lot of our customizations and integrations through the OpenAir scripting engine. It gives the customers one place to go to where they can manage, review, manually run all their customizations as needed. They can see audit trails and work logs, and it's really nice to have. We also work with customers that have third-party tools like a Boomi or Workato, and where they build a lot of their customizations and integrations using those tools. So wherever your solution lives, you want to make sure that you have access to it. It's not a black box, and you can control that solution. And obviously, the goal of all this is to introduce efficiencies and to influence behavior of your end users, and making sure that the data is flowing, that they're getting the notifications they need to be able to do their job effectively. Now, there are cons to expanding with technology that everyone should consider. One is the maintenance, right? You're building an integration, things change, new fields are determined to be added. What is the plan to maintain that integration? Obviously, TopStep works with lots of customers, and we stick around as long as they need us to maintain any integrations or customizations we build. A lot of our customers also take over those maintenance once they're live. So depending on your internal abilities, you need to think about the maintenance. Also, with all software releases, OpenAir comes out with 2 releases a year. If you're working with third-party software, you need to make sure that you know when you should be doing further testing. We recommend customers test, especially around all the OpenAir releases, the 2 a year. Make sure that you test all of your functionality in the sandboxes prior to going live, or demo preview account, just to make sure that the releases, they don't typically cause problems. But you want to make sure that you don't have end users not being able to do their job because a release broke an integration or broke some other customization. And then less reliance on the vendor core solution. You want to again minimize your customizations and become more reliant on out-of-the-box functionality where possible. But knowing the real world, that's not always possible. So that's where we come in. We can come in and help you with those customizations. So what are some of the things we typically see where customers want to expand their OpenAir usage, where they are running into walls? Reminders, keeping users informed, that's a typical one. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about each of these. Automating data entry, automating field population, another one. Validating data entry is a really important. And then enforcing policy compliance. So we'll dig a little bit into each of these topics and give you some examples of where we see opportunities for improvement or ideas we've gotten from other customers. So let's talk about keeping users informed. With OpenAir, you can set up lots of notifications. I've got a timesheet to approve. I've got a timesheet that's late, etc. Invoice approvals, expense approvals. Those are all very simple notifications you can build in the system. But there are certain things that OpenAir can't do. Now, what OpenAir can do, and if it can do a notification, is an email. And emails are great, but emails can be ignored, and they are not, if you're getting a large volume of emails like I do, it's easy to miss emails. It's easy to start getting numb to emails where they no longer are driving your behavior. And so with emails, we can improve when we have improved. So, a lot of customers, we've been able to work with additional notification options that are not out of the box. Slack is one. We use Slack internally at TopStep. We have lots of customers that use Slack as an internal communication tool. Well, we've integrated with Slack so that not only can we send emails, but now we can Slack you. Your timesheet's due. Your timesheet's late. I need you to take action on this, and whatever we need to do, because it's a custom notification, we don't have any limitations to what we can notify. We've also worked with a third-party tool, and it actually can send texts through OpenAir scripting. And we've had some customers that want to text users when certain events in the OpenAir happen as a more effective way of getting their attention. So texts, Slack, there's other options out there that we've worked with, integrating with Microsoft Teams or Microsoft Calendar to be able to show to-dos on calendars. So lots of options out there. So really making sure that, to think about how your users work, where they spend their time, and how do we get their attention when we need to. We want to focus to make sure you have effective communication. You want to focus on the action and the dependency, right? We want to only make sure that we're very focused on what action needs to be taken based on what we're notifying you of. We don't want generic, we don't want bland messages, because then you're going to just start to ignore them. And we want to do as few as possible where we can still be effective. And then we want the content to prompt the user for action. So whatever we can do to make sure the message is clear, it's actionable, and it's only needed when it's really needed, then that's an effective communication plan for communicating OpenAir. to your customer, to your end users. And what happens to emails that are bland and actionless, right? They end up in the old trash bin. So we want to try to avoid that because we want to make sure our users are getting what they need. Data entry time savings. This is something that we've worked with customers on. I'll give you a few examples. Annual cost changes, right? So if you're tracking user costs in OpenAir and annually you do some sort of an increase or even, some other, you're resyncing your cost averaging, it could, depending on the number of users, going and hand entering costs on a user by user basis could be really time consuming. So we've had customers where they want to do a few things, right? They want to be able to store the cost and automate the updates, or take a spreadsheet and upload that to replace the costs and historically tag the existing costs. So, cost changes, mass bill rate updates across all your billing rules, integrations, right? So if you're managing your opportunities in your CRM and we're bringing those into the PSA, we don't have to rekey all the fields in. That integration is keying in all those same fields, validating those data points. It could be a real key time saver for automating data entry. So those are a few examples. We need to don't forget to make sure the users understand the data dependencies, that we do validate the information periodically, and that we are reviewing and updates as the business changes, especially around integrations, making sure that someone owns those and is keeping an eye on them, especially watching out for any errors for incongruent data or things of that sort. Automate field population to get high data accuracy. One thing we've done several times for customers is they want to be able to take the percent complete from OpenAir, and they want to be able to store it on their project properties because they want to be able to then take it from there and move it into another system. And they want to calculate it a certain way that the OpenAir won't do out of the box. So, certainly we could go in and have people, manually calculate what those percent completes per project should be, but that would be fraught with potential error and be very time consuming. We do a script that goes in and calculates what the percent complete should be and stores it in a custom field. And then we've also, can allow for exceptions if we want to say. We had a customer recently that said, yeah, I know it says it's 80%, but we're actually done. We want to ratchet it to 100. How can we accommodate? We can put in a form script that says, if you check this box, project goes to 100% and it no longer, gets calculated thereafter. So some ways that we were able to do some automated field population using some customizations, and being able to accommodate for any exceptions, for any manual overrides, like moving it from a lower percentage to 100%, an example. Some of the other examples are like project health. A lot of customers are tracking, are we red, yellow, green on our project? Well, you can manually set those and have the PMs updating those. You could also have those automatically set based on defined values. How are we on our budget? How are we on our time capturing? How are we on other factors that influence the health of the project? And then we could automate the setting of that field so that it's not set at green and just set forever at green. We can actually have a value that meets business rules, that gives us real information of which projects we may need to dig into. With any of these scenarios, we need to make sure we're validating the information and we're auditing periodically. You'll hear that throughout this. We don't just set it and forget it. That's not how we recommend working with this. And then obviously making sure as business changes, we have knowledge of whatever updates need to accommodate those. Validating data entry. We garbage in, garbage out. We want to avoid the garbage in because we don't want the garbage out to start to influence, especially if we have integrations built So, you can build different ways to validate data. In OpenAir out of the box, you can do like field validation, where you say if you select this field, then these values are all available in field two. Well, that's really helpful, but there's some field validation that might be a little too complicated for simple form permissions. We had a customer that was requiring a service be set on the task. The list of services was very long and lengthy and not very user friendly, unfortunately. So project managers were constantly choosing the wrong service. And that had a ripple down effect. It affected billing, it affected the integration with their financial system, and trying to unwind all that after the fact was a real challenge. So what we did was they were using sales orders from NetSuite to integrate with OpenAir, and the sales orders had the correct services on them. And what we did was we created a validation script that allowed, if someone selected a service on the task that didn't match the sales order services, it would throw an error. So it was a validation script to help the PMs make sure they're choosing the right service on those tasks, so that downstream, the invoices are correct, the charges are correct, and they easily integrate back to your financial system. So again, an example of using customizations to help the end user, and make sure that we don't get bad data throughout the system. Be careful when you're doing validations. Too many validations could cause some frustration on your users. So you want to be able to make sure that the validation is, they understand why you're validating it and the purpose. And make sure also you're auditing your data, even though they're maybe they're doing the bare minimum to avoid validation checks. You want to make sure notes on a timesheet is a great example. A note on a timesheet can be required at a project level, but if I put a dot, the system doesn't understand that that's not a valid note. It says okay. So, those types of validation checks are usually done through the approval process of making sure but again, it's a validation check that people are actually putting in relevant notes when they're required to for their timesheets. Policy compliance. When I think of policy compliance, I think of timesheeting is typically the number one thing that pops in my head. Making sure that timesheets are being submitted on whatever we do weekly at Top Step. But making sure they're submitted on time, approved on time. We have a lot of customers that come to us and say we want to be able to actually report on timesheet compliance, and there's not a real great way to do that in OpenAir. There you can cobble together some details, but it's difficult to kind of go back and show a list of non-compliant timesheets or non-compliant users. So we've built some customizations for a few customers where we can actually store some of the audit data in reportable values so that we can see when it was submitted and could see when it was approved versus when it should have been, to be able to report on compliance and be able to have that available data too. So that's one example of making sure that our systems are compliant. You also want to make sure that your data is not in disarray. This can cause big problems in making sure that if you're automating to get more compliance, you want to make sure you're automating clean data. We see this a lot, especially when we're moving like from a CRM into an OpenAir. The CRM data we emphasize with the customers, it has to be clean. It has to be ready to go, because if you get bad data and no one's auditing it, you're going to get bad data in all of your systems. So in summary, while I remember days when we used to implement OpenAir and it was all OpenAir and all standard functionality that went into the project, as soon as they started to build in the ability to extend OpenAir, everyone needed extensions as part of their project. So expanding OpenAir using technology where it makes sense, is definitely recommended, and it's actually part of every project TopStep works on. We want to be able to minimize data entry where we can. We want the accuracy of the data to be as good as possible. We want to make sure users are staying informed and compliant, and being able to expand the technology is, always beneficial, as long as you're keeping all these bullets in mind as you're making sure you are not just doing technology expansion for the sake of it. There has to be a purpose and an outcome, and it has to be monitored and reportable. We want automation can help minimize human interaction, and that can be a really good thing. You get more accurate data, you're getting out of spreadsheets, making sure you're using the OpenAir tool to accommodate your make sure you're using open. We have some customers that come in and say, I want to be able to, do this and this. I need a customization. I'm like, well, you can actually get the system to do this without a customization. So making sure you explore what you're trying to achieve is not achievable in the system before you go down the path of a customization, because you might save yourself some headache if you can find a way to do what you're trying to do in the system. Thank you today for joining. Appreciate it.